Thank you for inviting me. Right. Well, I was born and raised in Las Cruces. I'm a fourth generation of Las Cruces, and my family is very large. And I went to school here, and I went to Mayfield High School, graduated in 1971, and from there I grew into retail business first and then went into banking. And for almost 19 years I worked at a bank that no longer exists in Las Cruces called Mutual Building and Loan. And I held several positions there, and when I left I was Vice President of Operations. With that, when the bank sold, a friend and colleague of mine in the bank, we bought a business together called C. Taylor and Company. And it was the first introduction the previous owners had made of gourmet coffee to the city of Las Cruces. We were the pioneers in doing so. And we sold 50 different brands and flavors of coffee by the pound, coffee beans, and then kitchen gadgets for hand gadgets, similar to another kitchen store that's now in Las Cruces. And we really enjoyed it. My partner and I did that for 11 years at the Arroyo Plaza. And with that, we decided 11 years was plenty, and we moved on to, she went another direction, and I decided to run for office. I started about 9 months prior to that, sitting at council meetings, going to budget meetings, trying to familiarize myself with the process of not just running a campaign, but also of what happens within the city and how the council directed policy and procedures, and pretty much just familiarize myself with a part of Las Cruces I didn't really have a hands-on to. I was fortunate because I never read out of the book. By the time I got there, it was just had only been in process about a month. We read off of a disc. Exactly, so you get issued a laptop, you get a disc, and you read it off of that. You could go to the library or in City Hall. There's printed copies, but we reduced the number of paper that was being printed by all the copies that needed to be made. It's easier to carry around, and I can do it if I'm on the road, you know, on a laptop, and so it's easier to handle. But we have 900 pages. We might have 1,200 pages. You have to understand some of it we have been through many times before we get to that point. Also, there's maps, and you know, so I can't say it's 900 pages of it is intense, and you should be familiar with it before you get to council. What was odd was that I had moved from one side of town to the other, and in doing so I had to change my city services, and I found it very cumbersome. And so I talked to the city manager about it and a few others about it, and it was a complicated process for some reason. And coming from customer service background, you know, I just didn't think it was customer friendly at the time. And someone told me, well, you know, if you want to change it, then get involved. And you know, there's certain ways to get involved and different kinds of aspects that you could take. And at that point, I just started inquiring about the process and what it would take, and here we are. And I can say that Mr. Moore, our city manager, has taken all of our concerns of all the council and the mayor very seriously when he got here. And in the last year, every city employee has been through customer service training through the community branch and a program that they developed just for city employees. And it hasn't taken all 4 years to come about, but changes have happened. I see that our staff is working real well. Customers are being treated, I think, in a much more professional manner. And I don't attribute that to me, it's more as just an observation that I had. And that observation kind of led to a whole bunch of other things. So then it was no longer just customer service, it was, well, you know, what's happening on subdivisions and roads and sidewalks and garbage and recycling and all the other things that we've dealt with over the almost 4 years that I've been there. And I also am a Toastmaster with Jean's Jesters, and I went to Jean's Jesters to re-up. I had been out of Toastmasters for a while, and Gene Kennan is the leader of Jean's Jesters, and he was counselor to this same district prior. So I had a lot of encouragement from him and a lot of feedback from him, and kind of the Toastmasters group also, well, what are you going to do about fireworks? You know, what are you going to do about swimming pools? What are you going to do about, so it was a kind of a training period during that time also. It's a public speaking, helps you get comfortable in front of an audience, or also one-on-one communication, how to prepare yourself for that type of communication. Las Cruces, back when I got involved, we were talking about a convention center then, and the process was halted. And I think over the last 2 years, we had way over 20 plus meetings, public meetings, discussions, consultants, and a lot of things went into that process. And I think during that time, Las Cruces needed a convention center definitely 10 years ago. The process probably started about 15, 20 years ago, and there's many out there that have worked very hard to get to this point. Some who stepped away because they didn't feel that maybe it was going to get there anymore and had put a lot of time and effort into it. Others who are new to the process and are trying to help the process. And then there's some that were just in the middle that are coming back and wanting to put this on our ground. It's very fortunate that the property that has been chosen is at the corner in my district, the corner of El Paseo and University. And it's a controversial piece of land, but it also lends itself the most to the community. For this type of a center, you have access to the freeway there. You have a wide 4-lane with a turning lane on University Avenue. You have the university to partner with. What makes it great for the university, and in our negotiations, was how the university could use that as a lab, as a training field, as we have an HRTM program here on campus that could be utilized in that same process. And so how better than to educate our young students to be prosperous in a field that could be anywhere in our country or in this world for that matter. And that's just such a plus for me. That's just such a way to put people into the process. We have limited ourselves in what type of meetings, conventions, regional meetings that we can have in Las Cruces because we don't have an indoor facility. We do use other facilities outdoor with tents and accommodations to try to cover for the weather that might take place during that time. But we have so many others that come to Las Cruces or have not come because we couldn't accommodate 1,500 people in a room. And the convention center is looked at, it's not a monster of a building. It's 82,000 square feet, smaller than a Walmart or a Target, but it's manageable, and it allows us to put maybe 2,500 people, 1,500 maybe in a dinner setting, tables, 2,500 people in a trade show type of event with breakout rooms where you could have different classes, different seminars going on. And the big plus behind it is that you finally have a focal point that you can sell. And you can sell it, it's not inside of a hotel, it's not something else. It's being run by a private industry that is going to manage and operate the facility. And with that, you also open up, for example, this year I sit on the New Mexico Municipal League, which is a representation of 102 municipalities in the state. I am the vice president, and with that, this year in August, we will have our 50th anniversary convention hosted in Las Cruces. The last time they were in Las Cruces was 1997. They move across the state. We've been to Municipal League Convention in Tucumcari. There's only 8,000 people living in Tucumcari, and they could accommodate a room of 800 people in their convention center.
Wow.
We've been to Roswell. We've been to Taos. Last year was Taos. We're working with the university to help us on facility for this event because we don't have an event center big enough. And we will have, because it's a 50th anniversary, our executive director, Bill Fulgenetti, estimates that this year we'll probably have the largest turnout. People love to come to Las Cruces, and we'll have probably 1,000 attendees. So where do you put them? And that's just one compared to many. University Avenue has an overlay. And what that means is that there was a plan put into place that is different than regular planning and zoning documents, signage, drive-up windows. It's laid out so that you protect the neighborhood and you allow economic development to come to the front of the street. The overlay was developed back when Gene Kennan was counselor, and I believe it was in 1992. And with that came the widening of, it was at the time that University Avenue was widened from a 2-lane street to all of what it is today. And so what this does is there's areas within the corridor. And the corridor goes from University Avenue to Monte Vista Avenue, and then across east and west of the university. So Pan Am Plaza, for example, is maybe a brainchild of the overlay, because the overlay says it'll be territorial, the signage will only be a certain size. Bennigan's signage isn't as big as it would have been somewhere else, to kind of not detract from the aesthetics of what you want the corridor to look like. Some of those areas no longer fit into the overlay, and it's being reviewed. But what we need to do is add to the overlay the new properties, which will be the convention center and the hotel across the street, because the overlay should also have some regulation on appearances, parking, how we fit that into the rest of the street. And as you know, with the campus master plan, we're trying to work with putting pedestrians onto University Avenue in what we call dash and dart. The students, faculty, they get halfway across and then they're waiting for traffic. How do we make it more possible to get across the street, have businesses that will be appealing to those that are coming to campus and the community itself? And so those are important aspects of how you can create a little economic development and still have town and gown that's called to the campus and the city. How do we partner and look like we're working together, and how we're a part of the whole thing? There's some things that can be done that will be reviewed by the overlay committee, and then let me just tell you a little bit about that process first, because the overlay committee is a university representative, myself, 2 people from the neighborhood, and a property owner, a business owner in the neighborhood, within the corridor. And so those 5 people review every time there's a change made, such as the new church that was put on University Avenue. Those plans get reviewed by the overlay committee to make sure that they fit within what the plan was overall. With that, we're looking at how do we maybe work with the city on aligning islands that would kind of give you a safety factor, some shrubs, some type of landscaping that to the eye slows down traffic, also makes it more convenient for the pedestrian to get across. Also, some parts of University, even on both sides of the street, where even if you made it across the street, there's nothing that says this is where you go in. There's either walls, there's not walkways. You can do some of that in order to accommodate pedestrians to not walk in where traffic is turning out of, but where there are actually walkways to the businesses or to the campus. So there's many ways that we can look at it, how you can incorporate a bicycle path that is not just on one side of the street, but is able to put bicycles on the actual streetway. That's the safest way that bicyclists really want to travel. They want to travel in a bike lane and not on a sidewalk where people might be walking, and then council still has to approve it. In some cases, there's drive-up windows were not allowed in certain areas, and now the bank needed a drive-up window, so the drive-up window was not on the university side. How you modify the building so that it accommodates what the business needs, but still stays within the plan of the corridor, and that's what's important, is because it's not your standard policy or planning and zoning regulations. It's what's laid out in in the plan. It's not so much the convention center, but what else happens along University Avenue. You know, part of it is how do we make it pedestrian friendly? How do we increase retail on both sides of the streets? As you know, the master plan shows Jordan Avenue as a very retail area with housing maybe on the second and the third floor. How does that fit in, and how could people live in the same place that they're maybe doing their schoolwork, their computer class, buying their supplies and everything that goes with that in a 3-block area? And you reduce the number of cars on the street. You reduce the number of trips that people make back and forth because it's so far to get to a business that you need. So it actually helps in taking some of that vehicular congestion to pedestrian. And we can probably maneuver around a person easier than we do a person around a car. You know, looking at the plan, you'll also have a performing arts center that's going to be part of the university. The university is raising funds and looking for funding for the performing arts center. So if you had a performing arts center, and then a block away you have a hotel, and across the street you have a convention center, and you put them all together, you have a venue that lends itself to draw people to our community and experience Mesilla and Las Cruces and White Sands and even Hatch and Anthony. We just don't want them to go to El Paso. No.